You've started this thing before. Maybe more than once. Maybe enough times that you've stopped counting because the counting is just fucking embarrassing. You know what I'm talking about, right? That diet that went hard for like 11 days, or the business you built to the point of almost, and then you just quietly dismantled it. The morning routine that was genuinely life changing for 3 weeks, or the creative project you poured yourself into until the momentum dropped and the resistance showed up and you filed it under maybe later. And then what has later become? Nothing. And here you are starting again. Or maybe you're just thinking about starting again. Or maybe you're in that exhausting limbo of someone who's not quite starting and not quite moving forward and spending an enormous energy staying exactly where you are and you're calling it transition. And this is the thing, it's a pattern. It is not a motivation problem. It is not a discipline problem. It is not a character flaw or evidence that you are not the kind of person who finishes things. It is a momentum problem. And momentum is not what you think it is. It is not a feeling. It is not inspiration. It is not the specific charged up energy of a new beginning. Momentum is a neurological state. And it is built through a completely different mechanism than the one you have been using, which is why you keep starting over instead of building on what you already have. And today I want to fix that. You guys, welcome to the Listen Bitch podcast. I am Brandon Lynette, the voice authority coach. Your mess is your message. And let's just say this, the starting over cycle is one of the most expensive patterns a person can run, not just in time, but in identity. Every time you start over, you're sending a signal to your own brain that says, this is what we do. We start, we don't finish, we reset. And the brain, which learns from repetition, builds the architecture for the pattern the same way it builds every other pattern, through repetition, until starting over becomes more automatic than building through. And I am genuinely, I am pissed when I see people, see you guys with real potential, real gifts, a real calling, running that reset loop while the thing that you're supposed to build just sits waiting. It's not because you lack what it takes. It's because you've been building in the wrong direction every time you start fresh instead of building on what is already there. That ends today. Obviously, today's episode is brought to you by Super Patch, and I'll talk about boost today because momentum requires energy, not the, we're going to crash hard after 3 hour energy, or what do they call it, 5 hour energy. Um, and then you've got that overload of caffeine and sugar and the fourth cup of coffee by noon. Real sustained clean energy that your nervous system can actually build on. Boost is exactly that. Okay, it is pure energy, no crashing, no caffeine, no stimulants, just vibrotactile technology telling your body to produce the energy it was already capable of producing. This is drug free, made in the USA, baby. The kind of energy that keeps you in the work instead of hitting the wall at 2 p.m. and calling it a hard day. Y'all know my link is in the show notes. Let's talk about why you keep starting over. This is the thing about momentum that the productivity world has completely backwards. Okay. Like, I learned this the hard way because, everybody was doing it. Momentum is not what gets you started. Momentum is what you build after you start, and it is not built by energy or enthusiasm or the perfect conditions or this right mindset. It is built by physics. Specifically, even Newton's first law, an object in motion stays in motion. An object at rest stays at rest. Your brain is not exempt from physics. When you are in the starting over cycle, you are constantly returning to rest. And returning to rest means every new start requires the full effort of overcoming inertia all over again. That is why every new beginning feels so hard. Not because the thing is hard, but because you are fighting inertia every single time instead of building on the motion that was already there. And the concept of neural momentum. I want to talk about that a little bit there because every action that you take in a direction will activate the actual neural pathway associated with that direction. And a recently activated pathway requires way less energy to activate again than one that has gone dormant. That is why it is easier to work out on day 3 than it was on day 1. Not because your body is stronger yet, but because the neural pathway for working out is more recently activated. Therefore, it is more accessible. The momentum is in the pathway, and the pathway builds through consecutive activation. When you reset, you start over from scratch. You're not just emotionally beginning again, you are neurologically beginning again. The pathway that was building has gone dormant, okay? The momentum that was accruing has dissipated, and now you're back to day 1 effort for what you could have been day 30 results if you just kept going through the dip instead of stopping and restarting and stopping and restarting. The dip, that dip, baby. Okay, I'm not talking about your Cinco de Mayo queso. I'm talking about the dip where the momentum lives, not the beginning, because the beginning is the hardest part neurologically because the pathway's cold. I'm talking about the dip, the part that feels like nothing is working and the excitement is gone and the resistance is the loudest. That is actually where the pathway is getting grooved. That is where the momentum is being built beneath the surface. And the people who build real things are not the ones who feel the most motivated. They're the ones who stay in the dip long enough for the grooves in your brain to form. You have been leaving right before the grooves form every single time. You guys have seen that graphic of the guy digging for gold. He quits, and the next guy comes and taps the wall once, and he's got the gold. This is referring to your dip. Stay in the dip, okay? There is a reset trap, and I want you to recognize this inside yourself so clearly that just recognizing this alone will change everything for you. Okay, you start, you have real energy for it. The beginning feels like confirmation that this time is different. You're doing the thing. You feel the identity of someone who does the thing. Everything feels possible. And then somewhere between day 10 and day 30, and this is that exact window where the most critical phase of groove formation in your brain, the neuroplasticity, the novelty wears off. Excitement poof, drops. The resistance that was always going to show up, it shows up. And the gap between where you are and where you want to be feels bigger than it did on day 1 because you now have been doing the thing and the thing is still not done. And this is what happens in that gap, okay? The brain, which has been monitoring the effort to reward ratio, has noticed that the return on investment, your ROI, is not matching the early excitement. And that starts generating the case for stopping. It is very good at this case. It has evidence, the days where the thing did not go well, the moments of doubt, the comparison to other people who seem further along, and it packages all of this as self awareness. It packages this as wisdom, as the mature recognition that maybe this particular thing is not the thing. And so you stop and you feel the relief of stopping. And that is real. The nervous system does experience genuine relief when a stressor is removed, and your brain files that relief as confirmation that stopping was correct. And the next time you are in the dip on the next thing, the brain pulls that filing. And the case for stopping gets built faster, and then the stopping, bada boom, bada bing, happens way sooner until eventually the reset cycle is running almost automatically. And it's not because you're a quitter, but because you accidentally trained your brain that the dip equals stop. Like, imagine you're trying to dig a well and you're digging for days. You're digging for 3 days in one spot, okay? 10 feet down, very good progress. The soil is cooperating. And then you stop and you start a new hole 10 feet away and you dig for 3 days there, 10 feet down. Ooh, good progress, right? And then you stop and you start another hole and another. And you end up with 17 10-foot holes and no water because the water was not at 10 feet. The water was at 30. And every hole you started over was 10 feet of momentum abandoned right before it compounded into something real. Bitch, you have holes, not wells. And the difference between the two is staying in the one that is working long enough until you hit the fucking water. That productivity industrial complex is built on your reset cycle. Every new framework, every new system, every new approach to the same problem, they need you to reset so they can sell you the new beginning. The journal that is going to be different from the last journal. Oh, that planner that finally has the layout that will make everything click. Or maybe it's the course that is the one you missed before, the program that addresses that specific gap that obviously you didn't get from the last program. None of them addresses the actual problem. And the actual problem is not the system, it's the cycle. And the cycle is profitable to maintain because the person who has built real momentum and is consistently in the work is not buying the next new beginning. They already have the thing. They don't need the product. And big tech needs to feed the reset cycle with novelty. The algorithm is extraordinarily good at surfacing the next thing, the new approach, the new creator talking about a slightly different version of the same idea, the new trend that makes your current approach feel outdated before it has had time to work. In your brain, wired for novelty, wired for experience, it takes this new thing as relief from the dip you're in. And then the relief just feels like a damn signal. Like maybe the new thing is actually the thing. And so you reset. This is not an accident. Your attention is the product. And the most reliable way to keep your attention is to keep producing new beginnings. The beginning is the most engaging part for your brain. The middle, the dip, the groove forming, the actual momentum building phase is the least engaging. So the algorithm surfaces the new thing right when you're in the middle of the old thing. Every single time. Look at the pattern with the specific precision of something that has been optimized on hundreds of millions of data points about exactly why people are most likely to abandon one thing for another. Know the game, and we're going to learn to play it differently. Okay. We could talk about Brandon who has, fucking 30 tabs open and zero finished things. Not, I mean, yeah, literally, probably 30 tabs. you know I different threads, 30 things that I'm building towards simultaneously. The podcast, the framework, the offers, the content strategy, the email list, the collaboration and the courses and the partnerships and the rebrand and the pivot and the next version and the version after that, all of it in motion, none of it finished. And I'm a hard worker. I go for this. And I produce less and less and less over the over the years than I'd ever produce. I'm working the hardest, I'm producing the least. Working the hardest, producing the least. My husband sees the pattern easily. Start, stop, start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. What? Because momentum does not divide, it compounds or it dissipates. And I was dividing it across 30 directions and wondering why nothing is moving. This is what I know to be true. The day I stopped that shit, the day I closed a lot of those tabs and committed to this one thing, was the day everything changed. And I'm talking in my soul changed. And it's not because the one thing was better than the others, because momentum can finally build somewhere. Because the neural pathway for the one thing could finally get activated consistently enough to groove. Because the effort that had been spread thin could go deep somewhere instead. 2 months later, the one thing had more traction than all 30 things had produced in a year. We don't have a doing problem, do we? We don't have a fucking doing problem. We're doing the shit. We're doing the things. We have a dividing problem. We pick the thing, we build the momentum, and we watch what compounds. And I'm not talking about getting in a pretty little box. Okay. I'm not talking about getting in a pretty little box because, bitch, I will tell you, I found my one thing and it ties in to 17 things I produce already. It just tied together. So I'm not saying box it up. Okay. But even Jesus, like, he did not try to reform the entire Roman Empire. Okay. He didn't try to overhaul the Jewish religious institution. He didn't try to end poverty globally and heal every sick person in every city simultaneously. He did one thing. He made disciples. He went deep with 12 people. He built the momentum of that one thing for 3 years. And the momentum of those 3 years is still compounding 2,000 years later. He also said something about this directly. No one who puts their hand to the plow and looks back is fit for the kingdom. And that is not a judgment about worthiness. That is a physics observation. You cannot build forward momentum while looking backwards, while comparing your current row to your last row, while checking whether the field next to you is being plowed. What are they doing over there? Is it being plowed more efficiently? Are they doing better? While wondering if you should have started in a different corner. Hand on the plow, eyes forward. Babe, that's momentum. And the people who build the things that last are not the ones who are doing the most. They are the ones who stayed in their one thing long enough for it to become something, long enough for the compound interest of consistent forward motion to produce results that the amount of starting over could never have produced. Your one thing is waiting for you to stop abandoning in the dip. One of my guests on my new show had started her business it 3 times, and it was the same business, essentially, like the same care idea, same target audience, right? Same fundamental value proposition. She started it, got to the dip, reset, started again, got to the dip, reset, started again. She's not the only person. I mean, if you listen to the conversations, there is a threaded message throughout a lot of my successful people. Third time, she did not reset. Not because the third time it was easier. Like she said, it was the hardest time. Because by then, the inner critic had 3 full cycles of evidence that she was someone who did not finish things. But she made that decision to keep going into the third start that she had not made before. She decided in advance that the dip was coming and that the dip was not the signal to stop. It was a signal she was in the exact phase where the momentum is actually forming. And when the dip arrived, and it arrived right on schedule because it will, she recognized it instead of reacting to it. She said it felt like finally being able to see the weather instead of being surprised by it every time. Like the storm came, she was prepared with a coat and she just kept going. And her business is running now. Same idea as the first 2 attempts. What changed was not the idea, it was the decision to stay in the dip. The thing you've started before is not the problem. The dip was the problem, and the dip is survivable. Bitch, we are here. Everything I've ever done has had the same underlying message. I've been through this. Not even 3 businesses. I'm talking like 7 years of trying to figure it out, thinking I had to figure it out. Bitch, all I had to do was stop quitting in the dip. Okay. And this is the part of the show where I'm saying if this episode is speaking to you, if it names the thing that's happening in the cycle you've been in, please share it with one person who needs to hear it today. The one who is in that reset loop and doesn't know what it is. And make sure you guys subscribe to the show and leave a written review. It takes a little bit of time, okay? It takes a little bit of time. And here's the deal. If you don't want to leave a review, if you don't want to share the show, then you have to donate to listenbitchdonations.com. That's it. So you can enjoy this and the price can be to share it out, or bitch, you could pay me. Buy me a cup of tea. I was going to hold up a cup of tea, which I desperately need right now. I'm exhausted. But I only have water. So I mean, I do get filtered water. So I guess you guys could buy me a glass of water. That's the thing. Like, throw some dollars in there if you're not going to just do the easy thing, right? Um, so what the fuck can we do about this? How do we skip the dip? You don't skip the dip. How do we get through it anyway? So first of all, you have to identify the thing you've started more than once. Not all the things, but just find the one that keeps coming back. The one that you've reset on before and you're either in again or thinking about starting again, okay? That thing is not your dead end. That thing is a well that you've just not dug deep enough yet. The momentum is already partially there. You have existing pathway, so I need you to use it. I don't want you starting over. This is not a show where we're starting over. Start from where the last attempt left you. Then We're going to get cool with this little neuroplasticity link here. I want you to define the dip in advance before you fill it. I want you to write down what the dip is going to look like for this specific thing. What will the resistance feel like? What will the brain tell you that sounds like wisdom and is actually a case for stopping? Real questions I want you asking. What will the drop in motivation look like? Get it on paper before it gets here, because that dip is named. It's going to be the dip that can survive. The one that arrives unnamed is the one you guys keep mistaking for the wrong fucking signals. You're saying that's my sign to stop. I want you to set a minimum viable commitment, just the minimum, the smallest action that counts as continuing. The 5 minutes, the one paragraph, the single episode, the one interview, the minimum that keeps the pathway activated, because on the days when the motivation is gone and the resistance is loud and the 30 other tabs are calling you, the minimum is what keeps you in the game. And the game is the only place momentum can build. You have been this close before, multiple times. You've done the work, you've built the thing, you've gotten into the phase where something real was starting to form, and then you stopped and you told yourself you stopped for good reasons. And maybe the reasons were real, but the cost is real too. That podcast you have been circling, the message that keeps showing up no matter how many times you table it, the version of yourself that exists on the other side of not resetting this time. That version's been waiting every single time you've started, and every time you reset, that version of you just has to wait longer. I am done watching people with real potential run the reset loop. I'm done watching the thing stay in the notes app through 3 false starts and a pivot and a rebrand and a maybe next season, while the people who need you are going without your help. You do not need a better plan. It's time for you to become the person that you've always needed. You do not need a better system. You do not need to feel ready. You do not need to stay in the dip this time. That is the whole thing. That is the whole thing. Just stay in the dip this time. You needed to stay in the dip. Let the grooves form. Let the momentum compound into something that starting over 50 times could never produce. I help people build the podcast and stay in it. Not just launch, fucking stay. Build the momentum that compounds. Show up to the work consistently enough that the neural pathway becomes the automatic response and the starting over cycle becomes a thing you used to do. If that's what you need, you guys get into those show notes and come work with me. Tell me your story. Come on my new show. Tell me what you've been starting and stopping. Tell me why you're the one who needs to be heard. Listen, bitch. Tell me why you're special. Okay? Do you hear me? The well is deeper than 10 feet. You already know that. Stay in the dig. Embrace the dip.